So we're still in quarantine here in New York, but since I have a newly acquired camera that I haven't been able to test out since the quarantine, I decided to take it to the park the other day for one of my tests. The equipment in question is the one Sony FS5, as well as the Atomos Shogun Inferno. So you might be wondering, why did I decide to test the 422HQ instead of the ProRes RAW that you can get with the Atomos Shogun Inferno? And basically, like, I've run a few of these tests before, and I've actually found that the ProRes RAW and the RAW signal being recorded as ProRes 422, the differences were like pretty much negligible. Like I couldn't tell a difference at all. Maybe it's because my eye isn't as trained, but a few notes before we start rolling the footage. One, this is only for cameras that can output RAW. This is not applicable to any cameras that just output a regular 10-bit, 8-bit signal. In my case, I have an FS5 with the RAW update. Number two, there seems to be some like lens distortions that aren't being corrected in the Shogun Inferno footage. And I just wanted to point that out so that it's not distracting anyone from actually evaluating the quality of the footage. Number three, so the internal footage is shot in 1080p while the external footage is shot in DCI 4K. So some of the differences that you see may be due to the fact that there's just, a higher resolution that's producing more clarity. And with that said, let's roll the footage. So to grade these, I used Joel Famularo's Alexa LUTs, which are vibrant and nice and clean. I also added just a bit of saturation, about 5 to 10% of saturation on some clips, because it's 10-bit footage and it can handle it, so why not? You'll also see a lot of trees and leaves and wide shots because that's where I assumed you'd be able to tell the biggest difference in detail. I can tell you right now that bringing the footage into Premiere and adding the LUT, it really did feel like night and day. I don't know if YouTube is rendering those results, but it kind of gives you that same feeling you have when you have like water or glaze in your eyes and then you rub your eyes and suddenly you can see clearly again. Now, I love the internal 10-bit on the FS5. If I have to shoot without a recorder, I usually exclusively shoot with the internal 1080p over the 4K, specifically because it is 10-bit. But side by side with the RAW to 422HQ, it looks a bit hazy, actually. I've also found that the external RAW to 422HQ footage is much easier to grade. I usually only have to do like slight adjustments to get the look where I want it, whereas with the internal footage, if I add warmth, I have to go into the color wheels and add coolness back into the shadows and really go back and forth and pick until I get it to where I really want it. So it begs the question, right? Like, why is there a difference at all if these are both recorded in 10-bit codecs? And that's when I had to remind myself that the internal 10-bit is a more compressed 10-bit. It's using XAVCL, which is a long gulp compression, which in short, it basically blends some of the frames together instead of rendering them separately so that it requires less processing power. ProRes is another form of compression, but one, it uses the all-intra method of compressing where it does render each frame separately, and two, it records at a higher bit rate. But it still doesn't sit well with me that these two 10-bit codecs would look so different in the edit. And the only way I could really rationalize it to myself is by thinking of it this way. And mind you, this is not scientific or proven theory or thesis at all. This is more my guesstimation. So the best way to think of it is to think of the different codecs, the XAVCL and the ProRes, as cups. And the recording bit rate, the color depth, the chroma sampling is the water that you put inside the cup. Now in those terms, the FS5's XAVCL with its 100 megabit per second bit rate is more medium-sized cup, and I couldn't find a definite figure for the ProRes 422HQ, but let's just say it's a 220 megabits per second, which is more like a large-sized cup, right? Now, in comparison, a 12-bit codec would be something closer to like the jug that I'm going to use to pour water into the cups, and maybe like an 8-bit 420 codec is kind of like those little plastic paper cups that you see on the side of water fountains in the office. Now, not every shot or scene requires all of the megabits attributed to these codecs, but you get them anyway. But if you need more than what's given, then the camera essentially plays a guessing game to fill in the blanks. So what happens when you have a wide shot or a shot of leaves or trees or anything with a lot of detail? Sony's XAVCL fills with information up to its 100 megabits per second limit. And after a certain point, if that shot or scene requires more information, the XAVCL just basically says, okay, there's a person here, there's a bike there, a basketball court there, maybe some trees. Other than that, I don't really know what we're looking at, so I'm just gonna make the rest up. Let's sprinkle some purple here, a little bit of blue there, smear some white here, and basically it looks like what you would see with the human eye. Now, with the ProRes, you're getting that entire 100 megabits per second from the XAVCL, plus any other extra information from the 12-bit linear raw data from the sensor. And that raw data fills the ProRes up, right up to the brim, until it can't fit anymore. And because you have a bigger cup compared to this one, you have more water and you can drink as you please. But where it really shines are those heavily detailed shots, where the XAVCL will just make things up. The ProRes 422 will give that image all of the information that it's thirsty for. No, I'm not drinking that, it's tap water, disgusting. But my point is, you have a clearer, more detailed image. So with the XAVCL, you get an image that basically looks like what you see with the human eye. And with the ProRes 422HQ, you get an image that precisely looks like what you see with the human eye, or as close as you can get to it without shooting raw. And with that, I leave you. I hope this was more helpful than tedious. If it was or if it wasn't, let me know in the comment section below. Feel free to like the video and subscribe if you feel so compelled. Now, I hate goodbyes. I just really feel like they're so unnatural for me. So when the time is right, at the whip of my hand, I'm just gonna cut to black. So. It begs the question, right? Like, why is there a difference? Okay, I'm looking at the wrong thing. The XAVCL is more a medium-sized cup with its 100 megabits. 100 megabits, what the fuck is that, bro? Okay. No, I'm not drinking that, it's tap water, disgusting. Oh shit, spilled the water.